Will do.
All right. Good
Who we
morning.
have?
Good morning, everyone. This is a meeting of the Economic Development Committee of the Montgomery County Delegation. We have 4 members present, so we have a quorum. Hopefully, more will be joining us. I've asked Ralph to kind of nudge people to get on the call. We have 2 bills that we want to discuss today, both sponsored by Delegate Charkoudian as the main sponsor. And the first one I'd like to take up is 21-25, a bill that's familiar to us that we've discussed before. This is the bill that requires the Board of License of the Liquor Board, basically, for Montgomery County to adopt regulations to gather information about the number and density of retail establishments with licenses to sell alcohol for off-premises, and to consider public safety and public health and the impact of density of these retail establishments each time a new license is issued. And I just did that real shorthand, but as I say, I think we're all familiar with the bill. Before I call on Delegate Charkoudian, because we have an amendment, which I believe you all received. It's a comprehensive amendment. And before I get to that, I would just like to talk for a couple minutes about some of the interactions I've had on this bill. I did talk to the County Council President, Kate Stewart, who many of you know is the former mayor of Tacoma Park, where this is a problem. She wanted to communicate to me that the council supports the bill. We did have a letter on January 30 that said that the county executive and the county council supported the bill, contingent upon the adoption of some additional amendments, which we will talk about today. And so I know everybody got a letter from the liquor board about this, and the liquor board said that they did not support the bill, although they were willing to take training in this area. And I just want to emphasize that while the liquor board's opinions are important, they are not the county government. And the county government's position, I confirmed with Mel Wanger earlier or yesterday, remains the same, that they're in support of the bill with some amendments. And then Council President Stewart reiterated that to me this morning. So with that background, I'd like to call on Delegate Charkoudian to, well, first, you all received the amendment, and I'd like to take a motion to adopt the amendments that we received yesterday. Delegate
Move,
Whips,
move to adopt the amendments.
is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Delegate Fraser Hidalgo. Okay, now we're open for discussion on the amendments, and
Don't we discuss the amendments before we vote on them?
oh, of course, that's what we're gonna do. So
They just move them for
I
passage.
know, but they move them for purposes of discuss, like, that's what you do. You move them and then you discuss them and then you vote on them. So, so the amendments are moved and seconded, and we're open for discussion. And I'd like to call on Delegate Charkoudian to explain the amendment, please.
Sure. So thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for considering this bill again, colleagues. And so what the amendment does, and this actually came out of Amy Salmon and I met last week after our discussion, and there had been considerable conversation about the 7 points that are already considered in the ones that the chairman read to us, the ones that have been emailed to everybody. And so what Amy sort of, I think at the time, was proposing was to take the concept that I was working on and to try to kind of frame it in the same way as that list. So I took that proposal, I went to bill drafting. They drafted it a little bit differently than the way that Amy had offered it to me. But it is the same thing in the sense that it is one more thing on that list. It makes density and its relation to public health explicit as opposed to implicit, which is what the board says they now have the implicit ability to do, but it's not explicitly directed to them to do that. Ultimately, I think, and Amy can speak for herself and the board, even though that came from our conversations, I think the board decided they didn't support it even with that. But I think that having had that guidance that this is kind of more consistent with the way the law is written, which I felt to be really valuable guidance. So that's kind of is what the amendment is. So the concept is still the same. And the idea is that we are saying to the board, in addition to the individual licenses impact on public health and public safety, you're explicitly required in Montgomery County to also consider the impact of this license on the density and that impact on public health and public safety. And that's not explicit right now. That's the background of the amendment. If people have questions or anything else on the background of why I think it's important, we can review that again. But, and I would just also add that we've had law enforcement, supporting this. The Tacoma Park Police Chief was at the initial hearing for this bill. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Before I call Delegate Kaiser, do you have your hand raised from before, or do you want to make a comment? Or
I have my hand raised from always. I don't understand. What do you mean from before? I've had it up, waiting to speak. I've been.
Okay. So, Delegate Kaiser.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Last week at our meeting, I asked Delegate Charkoudian 2 questions, and the first was understanding her density argument, and I was very impressed and pleased with the point about the health density as being different from the business density, and thought she certainly made a case for the problem, and she made a case for how the density would be a good thing. But what I then heard was the county government saying, but we don't know how to effectuate this, that it's not necessarily bad to consider the health impacts for the community, but that they were looking for guidance from Delegate Charkoudian. I heard a few other people then ask, well, shouldn't the county come up with the standard? And the county was saying, we have no idea. My question, I think, for Delegate Charkoudian then was, what do other, what do other communities do in affecting this? So my concern, and we spoke again the other day, Delegate Charkoudian and I, my concern remains that the county has no idea how to do this. So it's unimplementable. So we can say that they're considering community safety, and of course they should. And I think Delegate Charkoudian laid out a problem really well. I'm concerned that the county is still saying, because I believe you said, Madam Chair, that the county government supports it with guidance, but I'm not sure the guidance has actually come. So again, I remain concerned, and I'd love to hear from Amy, from Melanie, and maybe I missed something in the explanation, Delegate Charkoudian, of how the implementation happens. So thank you.
Okay, first I'm going to ask Delegate Charkoudian to respond to that, to Delegate Kaiser's concern, and then I'll ask the county folks to jump in. Delegate
Sure.
Charkoudian.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think that my initial thought was to go in the direction of more comprehensive, more guidance. I actually have prepared, it was sort of 3/4 of the way prepared, and I'm happy to share it with everyone, a lot of the public health research on the density issue, which could be helpful, for board members to understand better. And so with that in mind, when I had my meeting with Amy last Friday, I had that sort of being prepared, and Amy and I discussed it, and Amy's feedback was, that rather than going with a more comprehensive list, that actually we were heading in the direction of being very inconsistent with what was in statute, and that the preference would be actually that we streamline what we put into statute. And then she and I discussed what would be the other ways to provide guidance. And that's where we had come up with this idea of training. So as it relates to statutory guidance, I think it is really important that we have we have statutory language that's consistent with other language. And then when we talk about implementing, that's where I suggested, could the board get training from public health experts about what this looks like? And I, as a layperson, can put together a lit review, which I have 3/4 way done, happy to share it with folks on that. But there's experts who could do a much better job than I can at training board members of how to consider this. So that's why the letter that you got back, I'll just say I was disappointed based on my conversation. I was hoping the letter was going to say, we're fine with that amendment and we'll get training. Instead, it said, we'll get training. We don't want the amendment. I think it's responsible of us to still be very explicit in the law about what to consider. And I think it's appropriate to continue to communicate to the board that we think they should get training. And, you know, I can connect, I've spoken with public health experts. So if people need help making that connection, and if this committee wants me to also send a letter, you know, with some of the research I've done, connecting them to public health experts, I can do that as well if that makes people feel like we've provided better guidance.
When you say them, Delegate Charkoudian, when you say provide them with, send a letter to them, do you mean the committee members or do you mean the Liquor Control Board?
I can send it to anyone who wants it. If the board feels like they need more guidance, then I can put together a letter to the board. If the committee feels like they want to understand better what I intend, I can put that letter together, although we still need to vote on it today, I think, to meet the General Assembly's deadlines. Yeah, I could certainly copy the committee members. But I guess the bigger piece is I'm happy to provide more guidance to make introductions to people who have expertise in this. I would worry about having a statutory, I feel like the feedback I got from the board was the way I've written it was inconsistent beforehand with the way the statute is actually written, and now it is consistent with the way the statute's written. So I don't think we want to put the guidance in the statute, but I'm happy to also talk about other ways that we support communicating legislative intent to the, you know, to that, you know, to a statutory language that is consistent with the rest of the statute.
Okay, before I call on the county, do you want me to call on the county representatives first, Delegate Kaiser, or do you have a question for Delegate Charkoudian?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Briefly this time, thank you, Delegate Charkoudian. If I heard you correctly, one, offering the more health resources. Personally, I don't need it. You've convinced me of the problem, and maybe others do. But I think the other part, if I heard you correctly, you're really keeping in the education component and wanting it to be legislative. And I would support that because I think, yes, I trust the county to do so, but I also trust the legislature to force them to do so. So am I correct to understand that at this point, it would really just be requiring the training?
Delegate Charkoudian, I think the answer is no, but Delegate Charkoudian, go ahead.
Sorry, no. The board wrote back and said, don't make any changes in law. We'll do some training. That's their letter to you, Amy.
Right, but is your amendment more than just requiring the training?
Yes, my amendment does not require training. My amendment puts the explicit requirement to consider density impacts on public health into law. And I'm saying if there's a need for further guidance, I don't think it belongs in statutory language. That would be inconsistent with the rest of statute. We could add uncodified language that the delegation expects the board to get training in this area. I think we could do that. I personally,
or there could be a letter from the delegation chair or something like that to the, you know, to the liquor, because the Liquor Control Board said they like the idea of training.
The
but
training they like, they
just
don't.
To be clear, Delegate Kaiser, that's not in the amendment. Just to review, what the amendment says is that this is what they have to consider. They have to consider the cumulative impact of the number of retail establishments licensed to sell alcohol in the area on public health and the safety of the community. They have to look at the cumulative impact of the density of retail establishments selling alcohol. And they have to take testimony related to the impact of the number and density of retail establishments licensed to sell alcohol. That's what the amendment says. And basically the rest of the bill is struck. I mean, that's the bill. That's the heart of the bill. If that makes it clearer.
Sure. I would be glad to add the education part in, but I understand no one else wants to. That's fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mel Wanger, do you want to weigh in or give us your
I just heard from Amy just a second ago, and she thinks that's the wrong amendment. So maybe Delegate Charkoudian can clarify. We have there was a number of amendments that got sent out.
Well,
And I
first,
think we're just down to one, right? We're
Correct.
just down to one simple amendment.
well, we're down to the amendment I just outlined.
Okay.
Is that right, Delegate Charkoudian?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And so to be clear, Amy sent me language, which now the board doesn't agree with, but Amy sent me language that took the list of 7 things they consider and added something to it. I sent that to Bill Drafting. The drafters said you can't do it that way because you have to put it in the Montgomery County section. And so they took the same language and they said, this is how you have to draft that amendment to the Montgomery County section. And it references that it goes in that list. So if you saw Amy's original language, that's why it looks different, because Bill Drafting took that concept but put it in the Montgomery County section.
Okay. Yeah.
Chair, may I speak? So the amendment that was sent last night, Delegate Charkoudian is correct that it's moving the language over to the Montgomery County title. The one you read still had the cumulative impact.
Okay, maybe I apologize. Maybe I read the wrong one. They
That's
do
okay,
have
yeah.
dates on them, so I'm
It
getting
was-
confused.
Yeah, it was the amendment that was discussed last week that you were.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. That's all I was
Yeah,
trying to.
okay, so let
clear.
me, I'm so sorry. Let me go through what the amendment says. So the amendment says it's more granular than that. It says before deciding to approve an application and issue a license, a local licensing board shall consider the public need and desire for a license, the number and location of existing license holders, the potential effect on existing license holders, and the potential commonality or uniqueness of the services and products offered by the licensee, and then the impact of the license for which application is made on health, safety, and welfare of the community. And then there's a catch-all that says any other factor that the local licensing board considers necessary. I apologize. I really apologize. I read the wrong amendment. Let me throw that away.
Madam Chair.
Is that correct? No,
No.
not correct. She's
That's-
shaking her head. I am totally confused now.
That's
Yeah.
current law.
So,
Okay.
so
I am totally confused.
Laura,
Can I-
Delegate
can I give it a
Charkoudian,
shot?
can you
Yeah, since I
read your
submitted the
amendment?
amendment. Is that all
Go
right?
ahead, Delegate
Go ahead.
Charkoudian. Did I read the right one first?
Okay, so what you just read is current law, and what
Okay.
the amendment does is it strikes everything else in the bill and it adds to that list that you just read. It
Yes.
adds for Montgomery County before deciding whether to approve an application and issue a new license permitting the sale of alcohol beverages for off-premise consumption, the board shall consider the impact of the density of existing retail establishment license
Okay, okay.
off-premise on the public health and safety of the community.
Okay, so that's what I read initially. So I did have the right amendment. Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Delegate.
I don't know, would you like my office to resend it to everyone so they just have it in front of them? We can do that right now.
Can somebody share screen?
Are we able to do that? I can do that.
Ralph, can you share screen?
Yes, I'll get right on that. Give me
Okay.
1 second.
Put up the correct amendment because I should have written the dates on these amendments and I didn't. I thought for some reason the date would be on there, but it's not.
The analyst should put the dates on every amendment.
They don't.
We can ask them to.
Yeah, I know. Okay.
That's important. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so that is the one I just was looking at. That wasn't the first one I read, if this is it. Go back, Ralph, because I think that's the second page. Yeah, there you go. All right, this is the amendment we're considering. Sorry about that. Okay, Ralph, can you-
Just to be clear, Madam Chair, it's the density language that's bolded at the bottom that's new. Everything
Right,
else
so
is
can-
just
Ralph, can you
taking existing law and
Right.
moving it to another section of the code.
I got it. Okay, Ralph,
Okay.
thank you. Can you scroll down to the bolded language, please? So this is all the language that's moving to a different section of the code, correct?
That's the language that's already in code. And then
It's
this is,
moving. Why is it underlined? It's moving.
It's already in code.
it was put onto this amendment, so it was clear that it's referencing that.
Okay.
Nothing-
And then the
nothing
new
changes.
language is this paragraph right here that Ralph has up now before deciding.
Can we all
Right,
just?
and it's moved to Title 25 because that's the Montgomery County title in the Alcoholic Beverages Code. The existing language exists as statewide requirements for application.
I see. Okay.
Move favorable. As
Thank you.
Move favorable on the the amendment's already been moved
Yeah,
favorable. So
yeah.
I'm ready to move the bill. So I was stepping ahead. So sorry.
Okay, that's all right. Anybody else want to add anything before we vote on the amendment? And I apologize for the confusion, but I hope you understand.
Nope, I'm ready to go.
All right, everybody's ready to go. All right, so Delegate Kaiser is calling the question.
Yes, that's what I'm doing.
Thank you. So, any other questions from members of the committee? Comments from members of the committee? Seeing none. All right, all those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Or raise your hand. Your camera must be on for you to vote, please. Any Delegate Wims? Did you?
Yeah, I said aye.
Oh, you
Is
said
my
aye,
camera-
okay. Any opposition? Hearing none. The vote, the amendment passes unanimously. Now we're on the bill as
Move
amended.
favorable as amended.
Second.
Move favorable by Delegate Kaiser, seconded by Delegate Frazier Hidalgo. Any further discussion on the bill? All those in favor of the bill as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Raise your hand. Any opposition? Seeing none, we will report the bill out favorable. Thank you, Delegate Charkoudian and county representatives for your patience on this bill, trying to get it right. So, and thank you to the committee for your hard work on this bill. All right, having done that, we'll move to MC 16-25. This is also a bill that in which Delegate Charkoudian is the lead sponsor, and it's also been submitted along with Delegate Moon and Delegate Wilkins. We have not discussed this bill yet. What this bill does is establish the Silver Spring Purple Line Construction Zone Parking Improvement Grant Plan by the state, basically to award grants to businesses and associations for improved parking, basically because they've been so inconvenienced by the Purple Line construction, and also to encourage, excuse me, encourage, more economic development along the Purple Line. This is particularly aimed at downtown Silver Spring. Let me note that Delegate Corman, in the initial, you'll recall this is a late filed bill, and so the delegation voted to take it up. But Delegate Corman pointed out during that discussion that on page 2, line 8, the bill prescribes for fiscal years 2026 and 2027, the governor shall include in the annual budget an appropriation of $50,000 to the Department of Transportation. And Delegate Corman made the point that you can't mandate that in a bill because it's not in the current budget that is before us from the governor. However, Delegate Charkoudian checked with the Appropriations Committee, spoke to them, and the process is that the Appropriations Committee could amend the budget to put this in for 2026. And if they don't, it's just that language about 2026 is just inoperable. The advice she was given was to keep it in the bill, and if the Appropriations Committee puts it in the budget, then fine. If they don't, then it doesn't take effect in 2026. So that is that issue. There are no amendments, excuse me, before us on the bill. Are there any questions of Delegate Charkoudian? Are there any questions of Delegate Charkoudian from the committee about the bill?
Move the bill.
Delegate Solomon is moving the bill.
Second.
Seconded by Delegate Wims. Any further discussion on the bill? Hearing none. All those in favor of moving the bill favorable signify by saying aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, we move the bill favorable. And thank you very much. And let me just say to the committee, we only have one more bill to consider. And that is a joint Prince George's County, Montgomery County bill. It originates in Prince George's County, so we have to wait for the Prince George's County delegation to act on it. It was a bill, I can't remember the number off the top of my head right now, and I don't have it in front of me, but it was a bill by Delegate Valderrama, sponsored by Delegate Valderrama to deal with the requirement of planting trees in Prince George's County. And we're just awaiting Prince George's County action on the bill. Otherwise, I don't believe, Ralph, we have any other business. Is that right? That's our last bill. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is our last bill, and it's my understanding that Prince George's will not be passing that bill out this week or next week. It sounds like it's still in there by county committee, so it may be a while before we have any material, if at all.
Okay, so having said that, let's just be on standby. There's no reason for us to meet next week. And we'll just wait for Prince George's County to do its thing, and then we'll take up the final bill. I want to thank you all for your work. I know we meet early in the morning, but we did get done. You know, we were pretty expedient in getting our work done. So thank you very much. And I'll see you when I see you. I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, Madam Chair.